Sweet. Hey, Daniel, how you doing? Thanks for joining the podcast.
Hey, doing great, Dave. How's your day going?
It's going great. You were just mentioning that you did stand-up comedy. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh boy, for a little bit. For a hot minute, I tried it. The real story of how I started is pretty embarrassing, but I'm here, so I might as well tell the rest of the world.
That's the comedian side, right? Like that's the funny aspect of it.
Yeah, no, that's true. I always wanted to do it, and I found this festival that had like an open mic competition, and I tried it out.
What was the name of the festival?
It was like I think it was actually like Los Angeles Comic Con, like one
Okay.
of them down there. And I tried it out without even doing like I just signed up and I bombed so bad it was like traumatic. Like had the whole crowd against me. It was a big crowd.
Oh man.
So for me, I'm very much the kind of person like if I fail at something once, like I gotta keep doing it until I am satisfied with how good I do.
Right.
So then I went back to school. I was at U of M for grad school and then started doing open mics at like Ann Arbor Comedy Club and all that. And
Wow. The showcase?
yeah, showcase. Made some good friends too. Had a really good time. You know, obviously, um, it's tough. It was very tough. But by the time I had my last show, I was able to kind of work the crowd and I was satisfied. That was right when COVID happened. So I haven't been on the stage since because that
Wow.
kind of took out everything out of it. COVID was a huge turning point for my
Yeah.
life, and we can get into that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It helped me with coaching. It helped me with um, dealing with the crowd and kind of reacting and not. I kind of it's weird. I kind of see it. Coaching is a lot. Coaching a big group is kind of like stand up comedy because it is a lot of crowd work. So you know, if one kid is acting up and you react negatively to it, you give that kid the power. You know,
Right.
go too much of the power dynamics of 5-year-olds, but you know what I mean. Like
Right.
you don't want to just overreact to things that happen and be able to think on your feet and react and
Right.
um so I see a lot of parallels there. It was fun. There was one guy who's now pretty big. His name's Dusty Slay, who's around, who I was able to open for. Definitely was not good enough to open for him, but I did. So it's
That's very cool.
yeah.
Stand-up comedy is one of those interesting things because I was just talking to a guy on the podcast that I actually work with. We were doing a live last night to talk about our contract proposal that the GM offered us.
Sure.
And his cousin is actually a professional stand-up comedian. He's open for Dane Cook. I've met him. Well, didn't actually meet him. I seen him at the open for Dane Cook. I went to go see Dane Cook in Mount Pleasant,
Nice.
and Vinny Fastline is his name. And that's my friend's cousin. And I've somehow like seen on social media that they were related. And I'm like, hey man, how are you related to Vinny Fastline? And he's like, oh, that's my cousin.
Hmm.
And anyways, so we were talking about that and how difficult it is in order to break through that industry. It's so difficult. And then it's one of those professions that just harbors and it creates so much depression amongst the comedians because it's so hard because you're literally trying to build success off of making people laugh. That's such a heavy burden.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people will say that a lot of the best comedians they derive their humor from that sort of
Right.
struggle and pain. But yeah, I mean, you look at a guy like, I mean, one of the biggest ones now is you think of Kevin Hart, and people see him as sort of an overnight success when in reality it was the opposite. I think that he was working and doing every minor role he could do until he started getting his break. And it's just as hard to sustain that success
Yeah.
because you've seen comedians just have a couple years of living the high life and then all of a sudden they're gone.
Right. Like Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
I mean, he was one of the greatest, and
Yeah.
then he just fell off, stopped doing stand-up comedy. But he was a good actor too. He
Yeah.
got into acting for a little while.
That one I think was more by choice. I think of like, I mean, Dane Cook is actually
He's
probably a good example. I know he
yeah,
had issues with it. He got basically robbed by his manager, which was
which was his brother.
yeah, awful story.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of I'm trying to think of another one. I mean, yeah, when I was in middle school, Carlos Mencia was the big thing, and then he got called up ironically by the podcast king at this
Yeah.
point.
Joe Rogan.
And then that took a huge dip, and you know,
Well, it's got to be one of those careers that's so hard because you have to have content that like resonates in real time in that time in history and culture. And if it doesn't, then it just, I don't know.
Well, it's the same thing with a musician who, or a band that their first 2 albums are amazing because they're writing about their experience of trying to make it, and then they get to a point where they're living so luxuriously and so comfortably, it's hard to really derive that sort of inspiration because they don't really have it's
Right.
different, and even the struggles they are having, they're very different than the average person. The average person can't relate to dealing with contract negotiations with record labels
Right.
and that kind of stuff, or
Yeah.
having to make sure your kids aren't getting harassed at school because their dad's so famous, which is I think of one of my favorite rappers is Atmosphere, and a lot of his stuff now is a lot more based on like his dad life. I might have to go back now because I'm a dad and can listen to it, but like like compared to when he was like 23 and rapping about like just trying to make it through life, and it's just a very different appeal.
Right.
And I think the same thing with comedians because how much are you really interacting with the average person
Right.
if you're you know if
Well, that's one of the biggest things about like you mentioned rappers.
yeah
Like you look at some of the I mean, a lot of the rappers came from nothing. They grew up in like impoverished communities, and then that's what inspired them to be the greatest. And like Eminem,
yeah
it's like now he's kind of out of touch with society. He's like, how can you create music that people like that you came from resonate with? You know,
I don't know. I mean,
because you're living a different lifestyle now.
yeah, you're living a different lifestyle. You have to find a way to kind of keep yourself grounded. Well, I think of like, so I'm getting into my background. I'm from Los Angeles originally, and I can kind of speak that when you're in that gated community of the nice parts of LA, you're kind of trained to stay away from the other parts, if that makes sense. So,
Is that where you're from? Like the nicer part of LA?
somewhere in the middle, I would
Okay.
say. The Valley, does that ring a bell at
Okay.
all?
Yeah.
Um,
See it in movies.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we're kind of the butt of jokes of all that. The movie I can think of is The Karate Kid, the original
Okay.
one. Like
Yeah.
that's the valley that uh, I'm trying to think that I kind of grew up in. It was an okay area, but I'm talking like if you're one of these right now, if you're one of these incredibly wealthy celebrities or anybody, it's gotten a lot less of a middle class. So it's like either you're incredibly wealthy and gonna get the gated community, or you're doing what you can, and
Right. Right.
there's not as much of a middle ground as there used to be anymore. Uh,
I feel like it's like that everywhere. I'm originally from West Palm Beach and Florida.
oh,
And it's a lot like that because have you ever been there?
West Palm Beach. What's the biggest city it's near?
West Palm Beach is the biggest city. Then there's like Fort Lauderdale is a little south of there. It's probably like 45 minutes north of Miami
Okay, around there.
on the
Yeah,
right on the coast.
yeah.
But that's where like Mar-a-Lago is,
Okay, yeah.
where Donald Trump has a house and all these other celebrities have houses. And it's what's crazy about it is when you go there, Mar-a-Lago is like a little coast, like it's an island. You cross a bridge, get on the little island, and there's just mansions everywhere. But along the coastline, there's all these stores, and it's like a kind of touristy. But then just like couple blocks from there, it's just ghetto. It's poor. It's
Yeah.
a poor community. It's crazy because like you literally have paradise, but then you have just a huge separation amongst like the I guess the community that is there.
Mhm.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's a wild like thing to witness.
Yeah, and I've seen it pretty much I've lived all over the country at this point. California, Oregon, Kansas, Vegas, it's everywhere now, and it's only getting worse in terms of, you know, you got you had these little bubbles, suburbs and neighborhoods.
I do that all the time on the podcast. I'm like, what did I even say?
What is that accent? But like I guess where I grew up in Northridge, like when I grew up, like you really wouldn't see a lot of the uh a lot of the homeless population wouldn't really trickle over from like all the way down to Santa Monica, but now it's 5 blocks down the road. Getting a little older, it's 4 blocks down the road, and now it's you see a huge tent about a block wide, not just one tent, like a huge
Wow.
tent city, and it's pretty much everywhere under every overpass, and it's hard to go back. love my family, but it's like it's kind of like seeing like you grew up in something and it just kind of see it
Right.
go to where it is.
Right.
Um,
That's one thing that a lot of people, especially here in Lansing, that because this is like one of those super touchy subjects because there's so many people that are like, well, homeless people should be able to set up tent wherever they want. But it's like, okay, but they should not be able to set up tent like in your backyard. And they should not be able to set up tent in like a public park where you take your kids to play on a swing set. They should not be able to set up tent on a river trail where people walk and people come to visit the city. And now they don't want to come to the city and spend money because there's homeless people sleeping in a tent on the river.
yeah.
Like, that's not okay. But, like, what do you do?
Oh man, I was here to talk basketball. I don't.
We talk about everything. We'll get into it. We have an
um,
hour.
yeah.
We still have 50 minutes.
Oh man, that's fair. I'm trying to think from a policy standpoint. I mean, a lot of it is drugs. Because you see, I mean, a lot of it is you're trying to fix a symptom of a greater problem. I think, as far as homeless population goes, is there's a lot of different things. I'm trying to form in my head. Give me a second.
Well, and that's the thing about, talking about these things is, like, you don't really know how to break down the problem because there's a lot of problems. There's mental health, there's drug abuse, there's just, people that are, uh they're mentally ill. Um, and I mean, I watched a guy in front of the rescue mission a few weeks ago. He was special needs, like extremely special needs, and you could tell he was homeless. And it's like, you know why that guy's homeless because he probably there's something wrong with him mentally, and he can't provide for himself, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But so it's like there's got to be programs. There's got to be certain programs to help people like that. But then there's other things, there are programs and then people don't take advantage of them too. They would prefer to be involved in drugs and live that kind of lifestyle too.
Yeah, and I think I've seen both extremes in my time. I was had a bunch. I went to college in Oregon, so it's like I know
Where'd you
people.
go?
Uh, Here actually, University of Oregon. But in Portland, like you see it all, like they give them everything they want, and it's not and a lot of times there's both sides. There's people who just something's going on with them that they don't have the ability to get on their own 2 feet, and there are people who just genuinely just don't care. Now,
Right.
however they get to that point in their lives, I think that's kind of the greater societal issue is there's a lot of despair and just same thing. It's not even just homeless people that are having huge overdoses. I think one of the leading deaths of people our age, 18 to 35, is overdose now.
Wow.
So it's all fentanyl, especially in the Midwest. Oh man.
Right.
So
Is that just from recreational drugs or is that from like hardcore drugs?
fentanyl and whether
Mixed laced in, right?
I actually haven't seen if it's distinguished of like if someone intended to take it or not. I would imagine a lot of it is intentional. That's actually a really good question. I'm not sure, but I think the whole idea of just okay. So on one side, you have the people who are just completely in despair and have maybe no societal support, no family
Right,
support, and
right.
just said it's
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to do. It is what it is, and there isn't really a point of pride for people to go out and take care of them because there is sort of that thing of like, oh, I'll vote for it and people who I vote for will take care of it. But in my opinion, I've seen too much of uh, I've seen too much of the promises not being kept from LA to Portland to think like if 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 there was a good government program to do it, I don't trust the people in charge to implement it. That's my big thing right now.
Right.
It's like, do I want all this solved? Yes. Do I trust you guys to solve it? No.
Right.
Because
Right.
and it's like, because again, like, do I think the people in California actually want to solve like the people in charge? I don't
It
really think they
As
care.
far as the homeless population?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of people who get paid six figures
Yeah.
to help with it. If that goes away tomorrow,
They don't have a job. Right.
yeah. So
Yep.
what do you do? And there's the crime aspect. I mean, if we're talking just in California, there's that I forget the exact prop, but it's basically like under $900 is what's the word I'm looking for? Misdemeanor. It's not
Right,
like you
right.
just a slap on the wrist. So
Yeah,
there's also kind of this culture like, you know, no one's really gonna get in trouble for anything,
right.
but also no one's really gonna.
There's no accountability
Yeah, exactly.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge because if you can just walk into a store and steal $900 worth of stuff and get away with it, then why wouldn't you just keep doing that? I would.
Oh yeah.
Um, so you said you went to school in Oregon. What did you go to school for? Or did you also went to Michigan?
Yeah. So
So
undergrad for Oregon, I went
okay,
for I got my major in advertising. Um,
maybe I should work with you.
yeah, I had a really interesting because I didn't know what I think most people didn't really know what
Can
they
you move
want
the
to do.
can you move the microphone
Yeah,
closer?
yeah, sorry.
You can drag it back.
Good idea.
That way you can chill.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, for undergrad, I did advertising. I was not really sure what I wanted to work in music actually coming out of school. Was managing bands like my friends' bands and undergrad and all that. And did my finished up time there, had a lot of fun. But really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, like actually want to do. So getting out of school, I I went back to LA, got a job at a youth basketball program called Royal Basketball School, which was the basis of what I'm doing now with Dojo. Pretty much the entire foundation is from them. And I'll say that out in the open because I owe them a lot. Started as a coach, just as a side job while I look for other stuff. Ended up working for them for marketing and sales, doing everything under the sun for them. It was essentially a GM role from advertising to doing email blasts to I was interviewing recruiting coaches to work for us. I was trying to find new locations for us to host practices. I would set up times for us to go play halftime at the Clippers game, like a lot of different stuff. Really enjoyed it. Met a lot of cool people. Met a lot of former like pro NBA Euro basketball players. A lot
That's
of different
cool.
people. Um, at a certain point, I figured out that I didn't want to live in LA anymore. I think I kind of always knew that, but I really figured it out when I went home and I was like, this is not for me. So I started to apply for grad schools. Um, the day after I took the GRE, I flew to Michigan to visit my best friend who was at Oakland for his master's, and I matched with my wife on Tinder. We went on a date. We were really fond of each other, so we stayed in touch. And I told her, I'm going to move her across the country. I don't know where. I was applying pretty much as far away as I can get as possible. And she's like, "That's great. You should try Michigan." I'm like, "There's no way I'm getting into Michigan, but sure." And I got in somehow. Um, so that's how that transpired there. Um, got to Michigan, had kind of two paths that I was looking at. One was to try and be the actual coaching side. Really wanted to do the collegiate coaching side. The other side was I was doing ticket sales and sponsorship, more the sales side of sports. So I did those two things while I was at Michigan. Um, was a ticket sales rep and then a student manager for the women's team for a year. Then COVID hit, and then everything shut down. I actually had pretty major surgery the day it shut down, which was pretty nuts. But things changed. No one knew what was going to happen with professional
Major
sports.
surgery, like life threatening?
No, not life threatening. It was a hernia surgery.
Oh, okay.
So even if COVID had never happened, I was done for the year. I couldn't.
Wow.
It was the most painful experience of my life.
How'd you do it?
Laparoscopic. I'm really bad with the terms,
Yeah.
but
What?
it,
How did you get the hernia?
well, I think it's genetic because my dad had it, but I'm pretty sure I put too much on the squat rack and
Okay.
yeah, yeah. It wasn't totally.
Self-induced.
Yeah, a little bit, that ego lift.
I've never actually had a hernia, but I hear they're pretty painful.
The hernia itself was
So
oh, go ahead.
essentially, what hernia is like, your intestines are like
Yeah.
pretty much ripped open, right? And it's coming out.
Yeah. So it doesn't like, at least mine, it hurt like day in, day out, like a 3 out of 10. It would hurt when I got up, it hurt when I laid down. I thought it was just like a muscle, like a sore muscle. So I spent about a week trying to foam roll it out.
Wow.
Then I tried to do an ab workout with it, and then it went to an 8. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
thought, oh, this is serious. Then I had the surgery, and that was like a 15 out of 10. I have never been in so much pain in my life.
Wow.
Oof. It was my my whole stomach was black and blue. Sorry for everyone back home. This is really disgusting. Whole black and blue. Like I could barely walk without losing my breath. Like it was, and then the minute I woke up from surgery, the whole country had shut down. So
Whoa.
my dad woke up and was like, "Hey, like I got to fly back to California because he had flew out to take care of me." And my wife had surgery the day before, so she was
Whoa.
out. Well, she had yeah, we bad timing. So I had to have my friend and my old coworker, my friend Ryan, come take care of me for 3 days while I was just writhing in pain. So
Man.
it was a very intense start to COVID for me.
How long did it take you to recover from that?
Oh, I don't know if I really ever. I mean, I can still feel it once in a while. Like
Wow.
once in a blue moon, if I walk too much, it'll get sore. But
Wow.
I would say I was probably like back at the gym able to lift around July, September-ish, but still, I by that point, because they had cut my abs open, I had gained a lot of weight and
Mhm.
lost all my progress, so, um, it was a it was once that hurdle was done, there was another one to climb, so,
What was the next one?
getting in shape.
Oh.
Because I had actually lost weight during the season because I was rebounding and doing all this physical activity, and then COVID hit, and then I gained it all back, and then I lost it all, and then gained a little bit back, but not all of it. So it's been a whirlwind for that.
Wow.
So
That's that's brutal. That's one of my biggest fears is having something like that happen to where I get laid up and I just cannot do anything.
yeah, look, I didn't do what I could have done either. Like I took I basically just embraced the loss and didn't really eat the way I should have. Again, COVID
Mhm.
didn't make it easy, but that's an
Right.
excuse.
Right.
If it happens again, or if something God forbid ever happens to you, it you eat right, it won't be as bad.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just it's just like everything that I wanted to coach so bad, and I don't think had COVID not happened, I don't think I'm gonna be saying I'm gonna be, sitting next to Juwan Howard or Tom Izzo if not. But it definitely felt like at the time, like, man, I did all this and now it's just
Right.
what's even gonna happen with my life?
Right.
I think a lot of people, I mean, most people probably felt.
Most people felt super depressed and they felt hopeless during that time. And I could imagine that being down and not being able to really go about your normal activities, even physically, like being able to lift and work out. I mean, I guess for a lot of people, they couldn't do that either because then gyms were closed. But even being able to go for a walk or something like that, that had to be like pretty depressing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was painful, and then I did have home gym stuff. It wasn't the best in the world, but I could use it, but
Yeah.
couldn't use that,
Right.
and
Can't
then
lift.
no, nothing. Could barely lift myself up in the air. Um, so it was tough, but, um, I
So
it for
when did you move to Lansing? You live in Lansing, right? Or you live near here?
DeWitt.
DeWitt,
But
okay.
yeah, so I moved back here back. I moved here about a year ago. It's kind of a little bit early story, but I got a job in Michigan State doing their ticket sales, and about 2 months into moving here, I found out my wife was pregnant.
Mm.
So so at that point, there's kind of skipping a gap, but at that point, I decided to make coaching kind of a side thing at the time and go to the sales side full time. So I did the Michigan State side. Wife got pregnant, then everything again changed. It's like, oh, I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm all my money's going to go to daycare. All my money's going to go to this. So am I really just what am I even working for at this point?
That's one of the biggest things about having a child is the daycare. The childcare, it's so expensive.
Yeah.
It's like but that's one thing my wife and I had to weigh too, is when because I mean, we both make good money, but there was a certain point in time where one of our checks would just go to that.
Yeah.
And it's like, would it even be beneficial to have one of us working? Like, it might be better for one of us to just quit.
Yeah.
Like, this is ridiculous.
It's insane. And I mean, Lansing's on the spectrum. I'd say it's better than, you think about like living,
LA or something like that.
God forbid, like
Right.
it's the worst. I mean,
What is the going rate now for childcare? Do you know?
that's a good question. I don't think we had to get to that far, thankfully. By that point, I mean, I won't go into the details of what my salary was, but it
Yeah.
was about um think of the best way to put it. The average salary is about what it costs for daycare. The
Yeah.
average American salary, I would say.
I know that when this was 8 years ago, my daughter was just born, and we were trying to figure out um how, like, what daycare we were going to put her in. And we were looking at a daycare, and we went there and visited and everything. It was nice. Just normal daycare though. And it was like 2 days a week, 2 or 3 days a week, half days, and it was like $600 a week. I'm like, this is insane for one child. For
So,
one child.
yeah.
Like,
So
who can afford that?
2,400 a month, something like that. That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. And there's always demand for it too. Like you'll find
Yeah.
people that'll pay and there's not enough spots. That's why they can charge so much. I mean,
Right.
it's the person I talked to about Dojo, it's funny, like he said, the part of your benefit is you do have a daycare. I'm like, it's only for an hour, but I guess.
Yeah.
But even that's hard to find. Um, I think it's a lot harder also because it's you don't know who to trust anymore. Like
Yeah.
COVID kind of screwed everything up with that because you I'm trying totally lost your train of thought. Forgive me for that.
Well, you had mentioned that it's hard to trust people, and especially with your kids, and that's like one of the things. That's the most important thing when you're dropping your kids off at a program or with somebody. You want to be able to trust them, and it's hard. It's hard to in this day and age.
Yeah.
You never know who you're getting.
Yeah, and I guess what I was getting at is I feel like during COVID, people would see a lot more of like what their after school program or their teachers were doing, and people are now more skeptical of just dropping someone up. Like when I was a kid, like, and I don't know if you're probably around the same
I'm
age.
30.
You're 30?
I'm 30.
Okay, I'm older. Wow.
How old are you?
31.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, not that much older.
No, I'm ancient now.
Do I look older?
um, no, I was saying with the kids,
Oh, okay.
but that's could have had 'em like you had them younger. So when I was a kid, I feel like our parents' generation had a lot more of a deep trust for institutions, whether it be schools, churches, everything.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, when we came home and we said the teacher or had a problem, it was usually like, "What did the kid do?" And
Right.
there's kind of memes about it, like people make fun of it, like, "Oh, kids are like kids never take accountability." But I think there might be a little bit of that, but I think it's also just people are our generation grew up with it and was like, okay, we're a little more skeptical than just saying, here, go enjoy public school. We'll see you in 9 hours.
Right.
I think
Right.
and I think it's also gotten a little like public schools haven't, I wouldn't say they've gotten any better recently.
No, no, they have not in a lot of different ways. They've gotten worse. I I think it has a lot to do with social media, honestly. I think it has to do with the fact that, like, I mean, we've all seen those videos of a teacher who's flipping out in class,
Yeah.
and then a student's recording them, like, and then everybody becomes aware of that, like, oh, okay, there's some crazy teachers out there, and so that makes people more skeptical on who they want to leave their children with.
Oh yeah. I mean, you're seeing it all the time now. I think it's that the other side also is just kids taking videos of other kids, like fights or like what they're
Yeah.
doing in school. Like that's the thing that you can't. I mean, I was like in high school when freaking World Star Hip Hop was became like a big thing, and now that's just like the norm. Is you pull up
Right.
Twitter or Instagram and you see a video of two 14-year-olds brawling. It's just
I was driving through MSU last weekend, and as I was turning this corner, there's a frat party out front, and this dude and this other guy were in a fight, and this guy threw the first punch and knocked this guy out. and this dude just fell and hit his head on the like he was like in between the road and the curb.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just fell in the road. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that dude's head.
Yeah,
Hopefully he's not dead or brain
I
damaged.
was gonna say the dude who threw the punch might be getting.
Charged.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's the thing that they don't really.
Well, what's crazy is like I think about it, like I never got into a fight like that when I was that age, but like you don't think about consequences when you're a young person. You don't think about the things that could happen.
Yeah,
But like, I mean, obviously being a parent, you do think about those things more.
yeah. I started seeing things that I never thought I'd see in terms of just like what I look for and how I kind of analyze situations. It also makes you go back and think of how tough your parents were. You think, oh, they had a point. Maybe I should have listened to them a little more. Maybe. But no, I think there's also a lot more options now. I think you're seeing a lot more kids go to homeschool. You're seeing a
You're
lot
good.
more kids.
You really don't like microphones, do you?
No, I like rocking back and forth. It's just my thing. You see uh, a lot more parents were ones saying, "Okay, I'm going to stay at home. It's not worth it." Um, and it's Lansing may be bad. Again, it's a lot worse when you go to places like, I mean, I'm trying to live in New York City right now. Like,
Right. Right.
I got a cousin who was a very successful lawyer. Her husband successful in the banking industry in New York. They were living in Manhattan, and I think their apartment was maybe about as big as this room.
Whoa.
And that's not a knock on the room, but if you're
Whoa.
paying,
Yeah.
I think they're paying at 4 or 5 thousand a month,
Wow.
and it's like
Is it just the two of them, you said?
they had a baby, yeah. Well, at
Oh
the
my
time, yeah,
gosh.
and really little baby, but now they're living in Connecticut, big old house.
But the thing is they had to move out of the city to get something like that.
Yeah,
You
and
can't, I mean, that's just wow.
yeah,
That's insane.
I can't even. I like, and I get the appeal of living there, but when a kid's involved, like I don't really see that appeal anymore. When I'm
Yeah.
24 and you said there's 100 bars I can walk to within a mile. Oh yeah, I'll pay whatever you want me to. Sign me up. Now I don't know. Like I I keep getting people ask me like, do you ever think you'll move back to like a big city? And then people's people's opinion of what a big city is always changes. But I
People
think
think Lansing's big.
is it?
No.
Yeah.
No, it is not.
No, I would say it's about no. I think Lansing's around the size of a city I'm looking for at this point.
It's and it's growing too, but it's growing at like a slow, steady pace, which is nice
Yeah.
because like you can get in 5 o'clock traffic and be out of it within like 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't get around the block in LA in 30 minutes.
Yeah, I believe that. That's crazy. I drove through Atlanta a year ago, and that was the worst experience of my life. Like Atlanta sucks to drive through. I'm never coming here.
Yeah, Atlanta, LA, Miami, like it's I mean, have you ever been to Dallas?
I have not. No, I want to go to Texas though.
Okay, if you ever when you ever fly into Dallas, they have a 5-lane highway getting out of there, and it almost turns into like a game of Mario Kart because all the freaking lines disappear, and it's just people just kind of merging whenever they want to.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
insane. Yeah, but it's a lot different here, and when you live somewhere for a long time, you have to also customize yourself to the driving habits. So I was living before this was Vegas, and then briefly LA when we were doing our transition. And I got out here and I realized I gotta take my foot off the pedal. The cops are here like don't really write a lot of tickets, I'll say.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm not giving them a chance if I'm just going like 85.
I drive 85 consistently, so
Oh, allegedly.
allegedly. I may or may not. Now, how did you get into the dojo? Like, I mean, obviously you were part of a program in LA that was similar, right?
Yeah.
LA. What made you want to start that here?
That's a good question. I always kind of gravitated towards coaching. I think I mentioned it's always something I wanted to do. I actually took a break from last year just because my last prior to this didn't end the best, more me than anyone else. When I left my job, my plan was I'm going to give it a couple of months, get adjusted to the fatherhood thing, and then go from there. I think I was listening to, that's the thing. I don't know if there was even a moment. I think I was listening to Valuetainment, their podcast, and Patrick was just going off about, oh, you can do this if you can't find it, you want to start a business, do this, do this. And he said, oh, get 5 kids together and teach them basketball. It's like, oh wait, I used to do that all the time. And then it just like a lights flipped on for me. And then I said, you know what? Like I know what I'm doing. Let me try this. Because coaching for most people financially is pretty much a dead zone. Like your high school coach is getting a stipend outside of like the major schools or what have you.
Hmm.
Most people are doing it on the side. So the avenue to do it full time, no one's going to hire me to do it. I got to do it myself, which was my thought. Um, my also, it's funny. I'm thinking to myself, like, what was the actual tipping point where I was like, I should do this? And I think it just kind of dawned on me. Like, I've tried everything else. I tried teaching guitar. I
You
tried,
play guitar?
yeah, I've played for a long time. Yeah.
Wow.
Play, and then I tried doing social media marketing for companies on the side, specifically for LinkedIn. But when you are not in the corporate world, LinkedIn is very hard
Yeah.
to stomach. Um, I think a big thing for me was I wanted to do the same program. I thought it was a transferable idea. I wanted to go back into coaching, but I also really didn't want to go back into the competitive, like, how do I say this? Like, I keep saying like it's a freaking California thing. The game side isn't really what gets me. It doesn't give me the same joy as the practice side, which is really weird because I was complete opposite as a kid. But being able to actually sit there and help people develop um, is a big thing for me. But also, it's I was one of those kids, and this is where I think really drove me to do this. That I was pretty good. Like I was. I don't know if I was better, but I was a lot more motivated than your average Parks and Rec. Like I was a kid that would get pissed when my parents told me they wouldn't keep score in this league. I'm like, why am I here? Like this is stupid. My parents would do the thing too. I ask them who'd won, and they'd say you both won. I'm 5 years old. I'm not an idiot. Like come on.
Somebody had to win.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other side is, I don't think I was necessarily at that tribal level. And there's not really a middle ground for people to develop and get from one to the other.
Right.
So that's where the idea for dojo came in. The name itself actually came from a group on that I'm a part of. It's like Money Dojo. It's guys like sharing business ideas. And I think I messaged the guy or I just did it like, hey, like I'm gonna use dojo as my basketball name, so you know. But I also really like the idea of ranking up. So the big thing that makes dojo different is we use belts, quote unquote belts, in the same way as a karate dojo. So every student starts out with white sweatband, wristband, arm, headband,
Oh, cool.
and white dojo shirt. And as they progress, then they get to the next color. Um, I think that's a much more productive way to go about it than just go about by age.
Mhm.
Because just because a kid is 12 months older than he was doesn't mean he's 12 months better. I know that's kind of a cheesy way to put it, but like you see a lot of people's, you know, there's kids who start late. There's kids who start basketball late. There's kids who just develop late and the coordination isn't there quite there. There's kids who mentally just like, I think it's the thetas, talking about where you're like you're
Mhm.
cognizant. Like some of them just aren't, they don't have it yet. It's not their
Right.
fault. So I think giving them that middle ground, and it's a lot of parents are looking for that too. That's something that really got me going, is that there's not a lot for kids preschool to third grade. Fourth grade on, when you're doing travel and all that, okay, everyone's trying to grab at you. But
Mhm.
if you have, how many years is that? 5 years? I can't even count of not development. Like you're gonna go straight into something and not be prepared. I was hoping to be that middle ground, and I think the big thing for me is I liked the idea of not being tied to anything. So I'm not tied to a league. I'm not tied to a school necessarily. So you could play for DeWitt Panthers High School, or you could be in East Lansing as an elementary school student. Come to me and I can help you get better. I
Right.
like
Right.
that. I like the perspective of um, the trainer and the mentor as opposed to kind of the traditional basketball coach, I guess.
Right.
Um, I know I got completely off as to like what spawned it, but I think I'd actually have to get back to him the exact moment because I think it was sort of just a natural like the idea popped in my head and it just wouldn't go away, and it just kept growing and growing. And then one day I said, you know what? I'm gonna try and do a clinic. I'm gonna invite everyone on Facebook and see what happens. Got a kid to show up. Kid was too afraid to practice. No offense, I get it. I'm kind of intimidating to 4-year-olds and anyone older than that too. Um, but she said, "Hey, I know this place in St. John's. This court you can use. Great. Hosted a clinic there. Got around 6. Got I think 1 to sign up. Okay, I've got 1 or 2 kids that are with me now. I can build something from here." Um, and I think it really just took off from there. It's been 3 months since I've done this, and I've seen a lot of growth. I think a lot of it was just pushing through football season because I realized when I started this, I was in the the heat of football season. Like it was beginning of August. All the kids were doing summer training and all this.
Hmm.
So I was going against the grain for better or worse. Um, the the idea for I'm gonna actually go back up for a sec because I think I'm rambling a little bit, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Sorry.
You're good. So you started it 3 months ago, and how many kids do you have with you now?
Around 10
10. Wow.
consistently. Yeah.
And then where do you do this at?
So I have one location is the East Olive Community Center up in St. John's.
Okay.
The other is Court One North, the Hazlitt location.
Okay.
Um, and then I'm looking at some other ones, and then I have a couple of. I'm going to be starting to use a court called the Innovative Barn, and starting in January, which is up in DeWitt,
Okay.
and then a couple others that I'll be able to announce
So are you
later
looking
on
at
the
doing
line.
this like weekly, or is it like every night you're in a different
Uh,
location type of thing?
It's
Or
weekly year round. So every
okay.
Wednesday right now is Court One out in East Lansing. That'll change to every Saturday after the new year. St. John's Court East Olive is every Thursday. We keep
Okay.
it consistent. The idea is we give kids 2 options. Either you do a monthly subscription, you come once a week, you miss a week, you can make it up or double up, or I can prorate you. We're flexible. The other option is they can buy a set of packages. So it's like a package of classes, excuse me. So they buy 5 classes for, I think it was 135. Come whenever you'd like, they never expire. So, if a kid runs into, oh, he's got baseball for the next 2 months. Don't worry, we'll see you in 2 months or when you can make it.
Right.
That way, parents don't feel like they're tied or obligated to always show up every time because
Right.
you know better than anyone the parent schedule can be
Yeah.
Grand Rapids one day, Detroit the next kind of
Right.
thing. So,
Exactly. Yeah, we had my kids in gymnastics for a while, and that
oh
was
yeah,
that was brutal, both of them. And it's like, man, this is a lot. So we ended up having to take a break from it. So something like that would have been super beneficial. Um,
yeah.
so is this program geared towards kids that are trying to learn like the rules of basketball, like trying to get the coordination, just kind of like the fundamentals?
Yeah, so this is one part that I've sort of struggled with is to figure out what age I'm going to really target. On paper, I'm 3 to 12, and I have students that are in that age. And when my 12-year-old students hit 13, I'm not going to kick them out the door. I'm going to say, let's keep working together. But I am focused a lot on the younger
What
side.
if somebody who's 13 comes to you?
They're bring them in. It's at that level. If you're, if they're coming with the other kids who are 12 years old and on that cusp, then you're totally fine. Um, I'm not going to turn away anybody. They just have to understand that like you might be the oldest one there. Doesn't mean I'm
Right.
not going to pay attention to you, but you might be the oldest one there. But it's all about individual development anyway.
Right.
But I am focused more on the youngest kids because those are the ones that don't really have a consistent place to go. They've got
Yep.
one-off seasonal parks and rec, maybe.
Yep.
Everything below 4th grade seems to be a dogfight for anything. So that's where I've really kind of focused on. Plus, with any program, travel or not or anything like that, the best idea is to start young, build the kids up in the program as opposed to trying to get kids from other places who may have, jumped around a bit or are just trying to look for a team to
Right.
plug and play. Um, you're much more likely to find people or parents who want to put their kids into a new program if they think they're going to build with it. But if a kid's, sixth grade and he's good, wants to
Mhm.
play on a travel team, I'm there for supplemental, like as an add-on, as
Right.
that extra time and to get better. Um,
Right.
so and the big vision I have down the line, especially for the younger side, is I would like to, if I could ask, have you ever heard of my gym?
No, I don't
So
think so.
it's pretty big on the West Coast. It's a child size jungle gym where they do gymnastics, but like for really little kids. I used to do it when I was a kid in LA. My idea was I big vision is to have an actual location where it's all basketball related games or things for kids to do. So for example, there's hoops all of the wall about a foot above your average 5-year-old's head so they can hit every basket. You have footprints on the ground to show a walkway to do a layup. Like different things that will keep them entertained. Almost sort of like a big playroom, but basketball themed was
Right.
the idea. When I get there, I don't know, but that's like the ultimate goal. The other one is to really take this model and go to every rural community because those are the ones that really are looking for something to do.
Yeah.
Lanesburg, Bath,
Yeah.
St. John's, all the ones that are not close enough to Lansing to get that done. And the idea is I'm just going to keep expanding to that because there's areas like that around Grand Rapids. There's areas like that around
Right.
Detroit where they're just kind of too far to be
Yeah.
in the big thick of things.
That's one thing. Growing up in Charlotte, I was a part of this program called Upwards. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a basketball program, and I don't know if it's a like a religious program, but it was done through this church that had they had two basketball courts, and they would have like essentially it was like they had a bunch of teams. It was like like a league,
Hmm.
and yeah, every Saturday they would have games all day long, and like throughout the week they held practices. It was pretty cool. It was actually pretty cool, and it's a really cool program. Um, but what was cool about it is it was for ages that were not like in middle school or high school.
Right.
And so it gave people like kids that were in elementary school and younger an opportunity to kind of feel what that is like.
With that competitive nature and
Right.
yeah.
And get the training, be able to work with a coach and a team and kind of learn. It was always funny watching like the real young kids
Yeah.
'cause, I mean, they're traveling, they're not paying attention,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it was pretty cool. It was a cool experience.
Yeah, I think I've heard the name. I've also heard Sporties for Shorties, which I believe is out in Meridian now.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I've heard of a couple programs out here. It seems to be a lot are either like seasonal or
Right.
maybe they're not
Yep.
around anymore. Yeah, and as far as the little kids, like that's when I tell people that that's my age group, their first reaction is good luck. You should have seen me on Saturday, man. I was sweating like towards the end. Um,
How do you manage to keep them from like, keep them focused? Because, like,
yeah,
my son, like, he could be interested in something, and even if it's active, I still have to, like, pull him in. I'm like, "Dude, come on.
yeah.
Let's go."
The big thing I've found there's a couple things. You can't really control if they're going to lose their attention span as much. You almost
No,
have to roll with it.
that's true.
We got on time or
No, no, we're good. We're good. It was my watch vibrated and told me I need to stand up. So
oh, we can do the podcast standing up if you want. No, I think the big thing is you can't let them. There's a few things. So yeah, you can't let them get bored. When they're bored, they'll tell you because kids that, especially that age, are just too honest to really have a filter, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, but you also have to realize when they don't always they say what they mean, but they don't always mean what they say. So I had a kid on Saturday, like she was getting tired. I was trying to all line them up for a race. Lines of four. Dumb idea. Not worth it. One of the girls is like, "I wanna go home." I'm like, "Okay, that's okay, go you can go home." And then 2 minutes later, she's back and says, "Hey, can I have a ball? I wanna play." So it's like, that's fine. It's you're back, I'm glad. But the big thing is you can't keep them bored, and you always have to keep them on their feet. Um, and you can't, like when they lose their attention, you almost have to go with them. So if they're losing attention on something, I'm willing to just jump and like if I had 10 minutes for that I wanted to put to a drill and they can only last attention can last for 4, whatever, we move on. But it's got to be something quick and exciting to get them back in the mood. So if everyone's getting bored, okay, everyone line up, we're about to do a race. Okay, everyone line up, we're about to go, everyone dunk on the Fisher Price hoop. And we're all going to cheer them on. Um, okay, everybody take a ball and we're gonna go dribble up and down the court. Like things that really like, oh, I want to do that. Yeah. And that makes it a lot easier to keep them going. The other thing is like when kids kind of lose attention, it's supposed to like using that stern voice, which that's what my dad used. I used to use it a lot when I was coaching. Instead of being like, hey, pay attention, like you gotta be like, you have to almost use like your urgency voice, like you have to look here, like the same way a kid would try and get your attention. As
Right.
like, Dad, look at me, look at me. You do the same thing. Hey, look over here. I got to show you something. Like, because they'll respond to that a lot better than the negative reinforcement of like, hey, you better pay attention or else this is gonna happen.
Right. Right.
Because I remember being a kid and that scared the crap out of me. Like I
Especially if it was like your coach.
oh and that's the thing, like people like you look at me as a kid, I was probably one of the worst. Like I was very hard to like I had a bad attention span, like I would kind of goof off. I gotta goof off, but I just wasn't like I was by no means a model player. So like whenever I get mad, I'm like, wait, oh yeah, I was probably worse. And it just kind of calms down. Um, and the big thing is like when I go back to saying like the first thing we said was stand-up comedy. It's like crowd work. So like if the parents can see me and everything's kind of going haywire, but I'm still laughing and like having fun,
Yeah.
everything's okay. But if I start yelling at kids and like, snapping at them, okay, that's when you start to lose the crowd, right?
Yeah, and then they get scared of you and don't wanna come again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the mean coach.
Yeah. And I've been that for a lot of times and I look back, I'm like, God, it was so cringe. Like,
Yeah, I mean, well, that's important. You learned. You learned from your experiences, you learned from that. I mean, that's the most important thing.
yeah. No, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I look back and I'm like, I thought, and that's partially why I decided to stay away from I guess the game side, the competitive. Like I'm coaching a girls travel team as an assistant with Quest, but um in general, like I find myself I can coach much better when I just calm down, you
Right,
know, and
right.
and don't take things personally. And I think a big thing also is that inspired on the dojo is just kind of the culture that I would like uh basketball to have. It's getting very like you look AAU, like it's all very um, like I'm not a and this is me. Like I'm not a trash talker. I'm too self-conscious to be first of all. Second of all, I believe in karma and I feel like that stuff just comes around to get you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's also like it's hard for me to teach a kid like, hey, like losing's like failure is a part of life. Like you need to like push through when you have people basically showboating in their face at everything and at the high school level, which I saw a lot of. So for me, if I'm able to just avoid that entirely and input the kind of values that I think would better serve kids who are playing, then
Right.
that's kind of the
Good
positive impact.
sportsmanship.
Yeah. And again, I was by no means like an angel. I've had my screw ups. I am
Well, there's a time and place for it, right?
yeah.
For showboating and like, I mean, to an extent with
Yeah.
things.
Well, I understand like look, if you're in the NFL and like you worked your whole life to get to be a receiver in the NFL and you score a touchdown, like by all means, dude, like go off, have some
Right,
fun.
right.
Like, but if you're, high school, middle school, and you're at a tournament and you're like starting to, you get where I'm going with this. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a self-glory thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, people wanna I don't know, especially young people, right? They want the glory for the things that they do. And
Social media.
it's social media and it's also just like peers. You want your peers to look at you a certain way. And so when you showboat like that, you think you're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will say I blame Fortnite
it's
a
a
lot for this.
flex.
I blame like modern gaming culture. I'm a huge gamer too.
That's one of the biggest ones
Yeah.
for showboating and like trash talking is gaming.
Yeah. Oh man. That's a whole other topic I get into. I'm a big fan. I don't use mics for that reason. I just don't want
Mm,
to deal with people. Like I'm the kind of person that like I'll send someone a good game note. Like I'm not a trash talker. Maybe at one point in my life, but yeah, I think it's like you see all the dances and stuff, and that man, I, I just had a really funny flash. You ever watch the movie Basketball?
I don't know.
Made by the same guys who do South Park.
Okay.
Late '90s, about two guys who make up a sport. Didn't really age well, but the opening scene was just talking about how sports became more about like the showboating and the sponsors and all that. And it aged very well if you go back and watch just the opening scene. The rest of the movies kind of hit or miss. um, and I think that's part of the reason is I am kind of a nerd and I like kind of the like I'm big in the fighting games, right? That's
Mhm.
kind of like where it came from. Is like I'm big in kind of like because if you go into the fighting game community, it's all about getting better in training, and people are very positive about it.
Mhm.
So I kind of took that dojo mentality. I know it's different from a fighting game to actually practicing martial art. Don't get mad at me, please. Um, but just taking that mentality of like, hey, we're here to build each other up. Like you're gonna go play here, you're gonna go play for your team,
Yep.
but at the end of the day, you're coming back here, and we're all here to support each other.
Right.
Um,
That's one of the most important things about martial arts. And I actually like the concept that you have because I think it's important for people trying to think where I want to go with this because like there I've done jujitsu.
okay,
And that's one thing that like it's so intimidating when you go do it. You're like I've sparred. I have a video I'll show you after this that I was sparring with one of the top jujitsu trainers in the world. He trains UFC fighters. Um
cool.
and but like the thing is one thing that's a super intimidating thing to do. But when you walk into a room like that, like it when you have like a culture of people that are willing to accept you and help you guide you through the process, it makes it so much easier. Also, I can't remember my other point. I had another point and I lost it. But yeah, no, it's an important thing. It's an important thing for young people to have good sportsmanship when they walk into a place and not think that they're the best. Because that's the thing with like martial arts is nobody's good. That I mean, there's always somebody that's better than you, and it's like that in every sport. There will always be somebody better than you. So if you can train with other people and help each other out, I don't know, it builds like a team effort, team mentality.
Yeah, and that's really what I'm looking for. And I actually
Yeah.
have done a little bit of jujitsu.
Okay.
So and that's what I've done jujitsu, and I say practice squad for club boxing for Michigan when I was there. And with martial arts, it's really like when you first start out, it's not about if you're gonna get can I curse on this?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not about if you're gonna get your ass kicked or not. It's like how long can you last before you get your ass kicked? For the first 6 months, right?
Right.
Like how
Yep.
long if you're rolling for jujitsu, how long before the guy pins you?
Right.
Did you make it a couple minutes? That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, for boxing, it's like how long can you last before you're like, oh, I'm just getting destroyed, which just happened to me when
Right.
I was trying it out. And it's to push through that, it I think it makes it to the point where that sort of showboating thing is not as
Yeah.
needed because you're more confident in yourself for that. It's like kind of think
Right.
of you always think about the cliche of the guy who always talks about wanting to get into a fight at a bar is the last guy who actually knows what he's doing. And the guy who doesn't say
Yeah.
anything is the guy you don't want to fight. It's
Yeah.
kind of the same thing with
Yeah.
that.
That's that my other point was that I remember now is that I've done a bunch of different athletic things in my adulthood, so, like post high school and stuff. Um, I've done kettlebell competitions, I've done marathons, I haven't done a powerlifting. I wanted to do a powerlifting event,
Mhm.
but I went to go watch one.
Okay.
And one thing that was common amongst all of those things is the support that everybody gave you, including the people that were competing.
Mhm.
Like I did a kettlebell competition and I was struggling. I was not in great shape. I barely trained for it. Um, and everybody in the crowd was cheering me on. And, like other people I was competing against were cheering me on. I'm like, this is amazing. Like
Yeah.
typically you have this mindset in sports of like, I'm the best. Like, I screw that person. I don't want that person to be better than me. They should lose. But no, they were cheering me on. I'm like, man, this is awesome. And so, yeah, it's interesting to see that in different sports.
Yeah, and the ultimate goal would be to take that to other sports as well.
Right.
You know, football would be the next one for me, and then probably baseball because of my wife. I'm not great, but I could work on that. Yeah, no, the mentality is really what I think makes us different. It's our unique selling point. It's like we're not here to tell you if you don't do well enough, you're gonna get cut. We're
We're not
not here
creating
to.
meatheads.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I hope they're as strong as meatheads,
Right,
but
right.
like mentally, I want them to, because the sports psychology, the psychology of the game, of any game, is something that's not always in depth covered, especially at a young age.
Mhm.
You know, you're not talking to kids aren't really being told as much about pre-game rituals and how to get in the right mindset for a game. Most adults aren't really talking about that at all.
Yeah,
It's kind of like, honestly, it's a very much a podcast sphere sort of thing.
right.
But for kids, it's not like, I can't think of the last time I talked. Oh, say I talk to all the kids I can talk to about, like, hey, what do you do before the game? Like, what you do outside of here is 100 times more important as to what I do when I'm with you in here.
Right.
But a lot of it, especially with education, it's just, you have to, whatever's here right now is the most important. But
Yep.
to understand that you're limited within the time you have.
Yeah.
You're always gonna be limited with the time you have. But you be able to give them a path to improve on their own. So when they come back to you, then you can work from there.
Yep.
That's the big thing that I think is missing from a lot of it.
Absolutely.
Both in the mental and the physical side.
Right.
I think for the mental side, a lot of social media makes it so much worse too. Like, if you're any, I mean, think if you're a 1.5 star recruit or even a 1 star for basketball and going up the age, you're getting thousands of people watching you.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not talked about as much, I would say.
No.
It's a
No.
lot of practices are just get in there, let's get the drills done. Here's the offense. See you later.
Right. Yeah, they're not building a habit that you need to also do at home.
Right.
They're not telling you like you should have this kind of routine, you should be disciplined. I mean, cuz like when I did basketball, it was like you just go to practice and then you go home. Like you practice. That was it.
Yeah.
There was no like routine like, hey, you guys should be exercising, you should be eating healthy at home during the week. Eat before you come. Like this, maybe you should eat these kind of foods before you come. That way you have energy to burn. No, no, none of
Yeah.
that.
And a big thing is, what I try to, whenever I have someone who just starts out first trial, assuming there's not too many kids, I say, I'm going to show you some stuff that you can also do on your own, that you don't need me here, that you can do at the park, at school.
Right,
And
right.
if you do it every day, you're going to get better. Um, Usually start with like form shooting and go from there. But the point is, like, you want to give them something that they can take home.
Right.
You don't want to give them homework, but you want to give something that they can take and go elsewhere with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a big part as well.
Cool. Well, we're an hour into this. Time flies.
Damn.
Yeah, time flies really fast on this podcast. Last night I did a podcast that was 2 hours long, but that one was live and we were engaging with an audience.
That's
But
cool.
yeah, it was
Cool.
fun. So where can people find the dojo? How can people sign up and any information regarding that?
Yeah. So the website is just hardcourtdojo.com. I imagine we'll have the links in the description if possible.
Yep.
Check those out. If you have any questions, my personal phone number is on the page. You can text me anything. There's also a form there to sign up for a trial. First trial is always free, no strings attached. And I'm always open to conversation. So if you want to reach me there, Facebook is by far the best way to get a hold of me. So.
All right, cool. Well, Daniel, thanks for doing this. This was fun. We'll do it again.
Yeah, sounds good, Dave.
All right, man. Thank you.